Hi all, and welcome back to Nancy Boys. And first things first, a bit of an admission, I have been completely overwhelmed in the last few weeks. It's a nice problem to have, but there's just way too much content coming out. And I've actually managed to see a lot of the films that have been in cinemas. I just haven't had time to actually tell you what's been going on. If you do want to see what I'm thinking about films that I don't get a chance to review, check out my Instagram channel, which is Nancy Boys UK. I do occasionally post stories just to kind of give you an update on what I am seeing in real time. But I thought today I would do a couple of main movie reviews, main releases over the last few weeks, and then just throw in what I've actually been watching and what other films I have actually managed to catch. My plan is to do a bit of an end of year wrap up anyway, to give you my full kind of list of my best and worst horror movies of the year. So that's something that will come sort of later in November, December. Anyway, I'm here today to discuss two movies that I have seen. Speak No Evil, which was released on just this past Friday, and one that I've been meaning to catch since it came out last weekend was Beetlejuice. And I have some thoughts on that. But let's start with Speak No Evil. If you don't know, Speak No Evil started life as a Danish horror film, which came out 2 years ago, 2022. And it's one of those films that Speak No Evil wasn't necessarily a film that I would say I enjoyed. And that's fine in the horror genre. Like, you're not supposed to necessarily like every horror film. If they make you feel uncomfortable, they make you feel a certain way, then maybe it's done its job. And it definitely wasn't a film that I would say I would recommend to anyone. It was an experience, and actually the conceit of that original film was all around kind of politeness and social awkwardness, which I didn't realise was not a purely British thing, but actually transcends other cultures and countries as well. And actually, I think the film really did that a decent service in terms of that message of, you know, we really prioritise people's feelings over our own kind of like personal safety and our own kind of wants and desires. And I think the way the film did that, portrayed that really well. I just think that it was so nihilistic and it was so brutal by the end, and almost so pointlessly brutal that, I don't know, it didn't necessarily leave me kind of really wanting to go back and watch it again. In terms of the remake, so the remake came out on Friday, stars James McAvoy. To be honest, it's not hugely different in terms of, I mean, it's not been done because of language, because the original movie was predominantly in English. And I must admit, when I heard that they were going to do this remake, my initial interest was kind of like, do I even need to go and see this? I'm really not that bothered, because it sounds like it's going to be a bit of a retread and we're just doing it for American audiences. And then there was a bit of buzz last week when this film came out that actually they'd managed to kind of fix or finesse some of the bits about the film which people have problems with, and actually, you know, end it in a completely different way. And that was pretty much my experience. So before I kind of launch straight into a review, I'll just give you a quick synopsis and an overview of what the film's about. A dream holiday turns into a living nightmare when an American couple and their daughter spend the weekend at a British family's idyllic country estate. So in the original film, it's a lot more kind of obvious, as I recall, that this couple that they go and spend a bit of time with are just bad news. And it makes it sort of feel a little bit unbelievable, because you just think, why are they staying with them? Like, just leave. This clearly isn't a friendship. I actually found it was a lot more subtle in the remake, that actually I could see that there were nuggets of a friendship here, and actually the couple didn't seem like immediately quite so ominous. There were flashes of, you know, joy there, and actually times where they were enjoying it. Sometimes I felt like that didn't work, because you could sometimes see the characters reacting as if these people were absolutely terrible, they needed to leave. And I just thought, well, actually, are they that bad? Are you having that bad a time? But I quite liked that it was a little more subtle, and that the main characters weren't quite so villainous. Another thing that I thought was really interesting was, if anyone's seen the original, there's quite a pivotal scene which I still remember. And actually, when people ask me, have you seen Speak No Evil, that's the scene that I remember, and it's the bit that makes me roll my eyes the most, and it's the bit that makes me probably not recognise the film, because there's just a moment halfway through the film where something happens and it's so stupid, it's so unreasonable, and it's so contrived in terms of motoring the plot along, that it kind of lost me. And at that point, I think the film got a lot worse, and actually started to become a lot less believable. I think the filmmakers who made the remake knew that, and they built in a lot of context around that snap decision, that thing that happens. I'm not going to do spoilers, but you'll know it when you see the film, and you'll know it if you've seen the original, because I imagine it really pissed you off as well. I imagine that they knew it pissed people off, and that's why they wrote in some additional story context to make it make more sense. What I think is interesting with the whole original versus remake thing is you essentially end up with two very, very different films. Now, I think people don't like the original because it has such a nihilistic and brutal ending. And it's not crowd pleasing. And in a way, I really respect that because it does something that makes you come away from the film very uncomfortable, not wholly satisfied as a viewer. But my view is, well, as I said earlier, it's a horror film. So part of you wants to feel like that. You want to feel a bit shortchanged, a bit cheated, a bit pissed off. And you want to kind of feel like, I don't know, you want to feel something. You want to get maybe a different experience. And it's funny, whereas people, a lot of reviewers, and probably me to a degree, are saying that they prefer the remake because of how differently they tackle the ending and that kind of that last third of the movie. My view on that is they've done that by adding on a much more crowd-pleasing ending. And that's really difficult as a reviewer to kind of balance because I enjoyed it more. The film was more entertaining. It was more satisfying. I left the cinema feeling like I'd actually had a really fun, interesting viewing experience. It was satisfying, and it was a kind of a much more of a neat package. It actually had a similar feeling to those kind of 80s psycho slasher movies, like sort of Fatal Attraction, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, in that kind of that last act. Whereas the original, I think it upset people, and it was a bit daring and it was a bit brave, and therefore it's probably not ended up with the greatest reputation. So I fully fall into that, and I admit it that I preferred this kind of more crowd-pleasing one. But I think if you haven't seen the original, do try and see both. They are completely different propositions. That said, it's not just that it's mainstream. There's some really good performances in this. James McAvoy is really, really menacing, but again, as I said earlier, in a very subtle way, that it's never quite so obvious why that there's something up with this guy. Similar, Mackenzie Davis is brilliant in this movie. Just such a strong character. You really root for her. She really, really steps into it by the end. And I really ended up liking her performance. And I thought, by and large, I enjoyed them more than I think I did the characters in the original, who were just such wet blankets. Before that kind of ending scene kicks in. I think in terms of just criticism about the remake is, part of me I think the plot sometimes exists just to make the film work. And again, without going to spoilers, there are motives and reasons behind why this couple are doing what they're doing, and why they make friends with couples on holidays, and why they invite them to their countryside estate. But then it feels like we have to go through days worth of sort of character interactions to make that work and to make that interesting. It's fine. It's a minor plot point, and it doesn't really, I don't know, it doesn't stop you enjoying the movie. But in the back of my mind is a bit like, this doesn't really make sense. That said, it looks great. It's got a really fun, really interesting kind of final 30 minutes. It's quite action-packed. I would definitely say it veers more into like the thriller territory than the horror movie that definitely is the original. So it depends really what you're looking for. But I do recommend it, and I'd probably give this a 7.5 out of 10. We'll see where that kind of ends up in my end-of-year wrap-up. And then tonight's the second film that I saw today was Beetlejuice. And I'll caveat this by... I actually went back to Beetlejuice with an ex-boyfriend of mine about 5 years ago because he'd never seen it. And I remember that the end of that, we both love the film. It's great. It's iconic. It's nostalgic. It's just one of those films from childhood that has just got so many kind of good pop culture references. I think our observation at the time was Beetlejuice is just... It's just kind of more than the sum of its parts. When you actually break it down, it's very simplistic. There's not really a lot to it. It's more about the set design, some of those creative choices that they make, the characters. In terms of plot, it's quite thin. And we definitely came away feeling like, God, I remember there being more to it. And that's not a criticism. I think the film lives by itself, and it has quality behind it for other reasons. And the reason it sticks with people and it's so beloved is not because of the great plot. It's because it's just quirky and interesting, and it's like nothing we've ever seen before. Which brings me to Beetlejuice. And I don't know if I'm just in a bad mood, and obviously I have a bit of reputation as being a bit of a grunt, but I really, really I just didn't think this was a very good film. For various reasons. And I think I've spoken about this before on my channel, that I feel like the whole movie industry for the last 10, 15 years has been going through a bit of a midlife crisis. And that's weird because I feel like I'm in my early 40s now, probably going through something similar where, nostalgia really has a pull on me, and, I do hark back to the past quite a lot. But my God, am I bored of legacy sequels that cannot think of anything new to say. They just recycle the same stuff we've seen from the original movie. And I just think this film has absolutely no original ideas. And I've had a few people say, oh, I think it treads the line quite well, and it kind of does the nostalgia without overdoing it. I just think the whole film is just, again, overdone nostalgia and just callbacks to a film that was better, that makes you just think, I'll just go and watch the original then, if that's all we're going to do. Anyway, just to give a quick synopsis of the movie. If you haven't seen the original, then go and watch that first. But the plot basically is 3 generations of the Dietz family return home to Winter River after an unexpected family tragedy. Still haunted by Beetlejuice, Lydia's life soon gets turned upside down when her rebellious teenage daughter discovers a mysterious portal to the afterlife. So, as I said, there's a whole lot of member berries with Beetlejuice. There's a whole lot of callbacks, scenes that kind of get recreated. It's again one of those films where it's like they couldn't just resist having a scene with the sandworms. They couldn't resist having a scene where some characters are forced to sing a song, because that was good in the original, so we cannot not have it again in the follow-up. And it's weird because the original plot of Beetlejuice, the first one, is so minimal. It's so kind of scant, like it just does its thing, and it's all done by, again, set design and pace and character. This film is so stuffed with plots. There's like 10 different plots happening, and I don't think any of them are particularly interesting. None of them are stuck with for any kind of significant amount of time, and I just don't think we're really given a reason to care, to be honest. I think in terms of the characters that come back, I'm really disappointed with the Lydia Dietz character played by Winona Ryder. She was such a kind of mysterious goth in the original, very smart, very witty, very, very overdramatic. In this one, she is just such a wet blanket, and I just didn't get a sense that we were seeing Lydia again. I just thought we were getting Winona Ryder playing a sort of approximate version of someone, but it wasn't that character from 1988. I love Catherine O'Hara, and I would say she was probably the best bit about this film. But again, I don't think she was playing Delia Dietz. I think she was playing Catherine O'Hara, and it didn't feel like we were getting that same character. And I just found that none of these characters just had enough to invest in. I thought Jenna Ortega did Jenna Ortega like she normally does. Monica Bellucci has a role in this film which is completely pointless, and I will not be the first to point out that if you lifted her out of this film, it wouldn't change a thing. Same with Justin Theroux's character. He's just a bit of a nuisance. There's this whole thing about a wedding which is happening, and it kind of, you see Lydia Dietz's character almost being like, oh yeah, the wedding, and rolling her eyes about it like she doesn't want to do it. And I think we as the audience, I definitely felt like, yeah, I don't care either. This is just not interesting. And I feel like there just is too much going on. There was no sense of what we were supposed to care about. And again, it just felt like, let's just do a showcase of all the stuff we liked about the last one. And I just think we're all going to probably forget about this film in a year or two's time, and we'll all go back to reverting back to watching the original. So I feel really bad about it, but it's going to be a 5 out of 10 for me. And yeah, people will flock to this, and I'm sure it's going to become a Halloween favourite going forward, but just wasn't for me. Anyway, as I mentioned at the beginning, there's been a lot going on. I have seen Alien Romulus, which I loved. I really did enjoy that. Funny enough, when we talk about remakes and callbacks, I mean, that film definitely is guilty of callbacks, but I thought it just did it far more artfully, and it also brought some new stuff and a new spin, and just a really solid, good film with good characters that I cared about. I saw Odyssey last night, which again I really enjoyed. I probably want to go back to it again and have a rewatch, because I definitely felt like my attention dipped in the middle, but great jump scares. I mean, I literally screamed out loud last night on my own here in this flat. So that was quite interesting. And then finally I saw Cuckoo about 3 weeks ago as well. And again, I liked it. I would like to rewatch it. It felt a bit like some of the plot points were a little bit convoluted, almost in the same way that Longlegs was. But there was just something so madly kind of Argento about Cookie that I really liked, and I loved Hunter Schafer and her performance in that movie as well. So there's been some really good stuff out the last few weeks, and I'm just sorry I haven't been able to share it all with you, but that will all be in my end of year wrap up. I'm actually seeing The Substance for my first time as a member of the press. So I count as press now. So that's going to be on Tuesday. So we'll do a full review of The Substance. And in the next few weeks, I'm going to be covering the BFI London Film Festival with Phil Marriott at the Boys on Film YouTube channel. So my first bit of red carpeting and presenting and actually getting out there and looking at some other movies that aren't horror. So thank you for watching today. Two interesting choices, and one that I would actually absolutely recommend, and one that you're absolutely going to go and see anyway without my recommendation or not. But hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next one.